All right. A couple years ago, Jim, who started the Broken Copier with me, shared this awesome survey of just like this check-in that he would give and add to an exit ticket, put at the end of Google Forms. And I've adapted that to my classroom. And the last couple of years, it's become this core system that I wanted to share about today because for me, what I found most valuable about it is it gives me this snapshot of how things are going in a given classroom community or maybe a section of classes that I teach, but also it creates a way to track and understand how it's going over time. So it's kind of this like win-win for me, but then especially allows me to then bring the data, the results back into the classroom and share them with students. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk through the survey briefly, though I know the post that I'm including with this does so more extensively. And then what I'm going to do is kind of talk about like what I would recommend if you're going to start using this more often yourself. So the first question, as you can see on your screen, is just how are things going? And it's a 1 to 7. I prefer 1 to 7 because it gives kind of some variation from like one. For me, like a one is different than a three, and a five is different than a seven. And we use that structure pretty frequently in class. I've seen people do like 1 to 6 to remove that middle option. But the goal here is to keep it really simple. Like, hey, gut instinct right now. How is this class going for you? This is an anonymous survey. So I try to emphasize to students, like, I'm really not going like line by line when I go through these, except for one part later on. What I am doing is looking at the class averages and then the overall averages over time. So I just want them to go with their gut and to be honest. And then from there, that helps me understand how we're doing as a class. To contextualize that a little bit, so it's not just a number. I took something from Coda Pedagogy. They had a piece, and I've linked to it in my article about semantic pulse check surveys, where basically it's a drop down. So students will click and pick one of 20 words. I've got them provided here so they can kind of visually see like the range from not very good to not good to a little good to really good. And I talk through these words more extensively at the start of the year. And this allows me then to share a word cloud with students after the fact. So when we go over the results, it's not just this number, which I really like nerd out on, like the numbers and how they vary, and going into like the 100th decimal point. But for students, seeing the word cloud of the words that they said, and then leading them into a conversation from there about how we feel as a classroom community, that's probably the most valuable thing this survey offers. So I also allow them to choose a different word in the optional space at the end if none of the 20 words work. But usually they pick one of the 20 words and it's really helpful. I'm going to show you some results later on from here. This third question is how are things going for you overall as a student? This is like my like baseline because if I have a student who is saying like, oh, I feel like a 2 or a 3 in your class, I'm like, okay, that's a thing. And regardless, I'm going to respond that way. But if that student is saying they're also a 2 or a 3 in all their other classes, that's a little different than if a student is a 5, a 6, or even a 7 in all their classes and mine's the class that's not supporting them, that's not a good experience. And to be fair, the flip side, right? If that student is, a 6 or a 7 in all their classes, a little different if they're like a 6 or a 7 in mine, but having a tougher experience in other classes. So that also helps me understand how is my class doing over the course of the year versus students' experiences in other classes. And that can look different in this question. For instance, for like my AP students versus my students in my general ed courses or English 10, students have electives in other classes. So this is a muddy question. You could go into the specifics, but the goal here is for it to be a really quick survey. So I just prefer it to be the exact same format and then to have it as a comparison point. And then we get to the fourth question. I feel really strongly that this question needs to be worded a specific way. I emphasize for me to know to best support a student in class. It's not like, hey, tell me your life story. It's not, hey, is there anything important or personal going on? Like I think sometimes teachers ask too much or they create the assumption that students have to share too much. I try to be really intentional here, and it is optional. I probably have about 5 to 10 students fill this out of every 100 students. But when they share things, they share really important things like, hey, I've been really sick at home, or there's a illness going through our house. I've been falling behind in class. I apologize for not being as present of late. But students share about upcoming trips where they'll be gone and need work. Mr. Luther, I cannot see the board from where I'm sitting. Hey, this is something in another class that really helps. It'd be helpful if you did this in your class. All sorts of things. Of course, every once in a while, a student says something a little bit more where it's like, hey, I'm going to connect you with our counseling staff. So it's a great tool. It's definitely something you want to pay attention to. But one thing that I want to be clear is that I really value the anonymous aspect of the survey for questions 1 through 3. For the fourth question, though, it's a little tricky. So I emphasize, I put it on the survey, I put it on the screen, and I tell students as they're doing this, if you leave information to better support you, I need a name attached at the end. And I try to throw up like a model answer on the screen, because if it's anonymous, I won't know who said it. So that is one little tricky point. I'll probably come up with a solution at some point that's better than that, but for now, that's how I handle it. So why do this survey? For me, like I want to just show you, like this is a script like from this previous year. This is what students see, what I share with them when we go over the results. And this is usually like the next lesson or maybe like the next week, where I'm going to show them the word cloud of what we had. I'm also going to show with them the data, a lot of times comparison points. So this was like out of 7. These were like our lowest point first semester was that 4.69 out of 7. And then the lowest point when I did this survey, which I believe was like in April, with a month before the AP exam, was 4.84. Both times right before a big essay was going to be turned in. So that's why I put those next to each other in terms of comparison points. So I wanted them to see that it was a little bit lower than the previous one, but it was also higher than our low point the first semester. And then we talked about some words that they saw and challenged. As I've told them, this is an AP class. I kind of like the word challenged, but I also know that like challenged plus supported, it's a great thing, but challenged but unsupported, the absolute worst thing in the world, right? So it really depends on almost like what word number 2 is. We talk about like some other words in here that were showing up. And actually, you can see at the bottom of the screen, I actually facilitated a conversation with students about how would they react to this data if they were also the teacher in charge of preparing students for an AP exam a month out. And again, the goal of this survey is not to fix everything. The goal of this survey is not to like pat yourself on the back all the time. The goal is to get more information for you to better understand your students in your class period, and then to turn around and open the door to really important conversations in your classroom, which I have found to be like the heart and soul of the survey. Is it helps me talk with my students about our classroom community and helps me understand them. I have great data then to like, move through. You can see this is like my English 10 data over time. I can see when it goes up. I can see when it goes down. I can see kind of where we end. And you can see trends over time. You can see, for instance, that the English 10, this is last year, first semester in this snapshot that I'm showing, got better for the most part all the way through the finish line from 5.1 to 5.5 in January. And then there are other classes that kind of went down. So in that case, is one of the reasons I was so proud of what we were doing in our English 10 courses. It was we were creating an experience that was an outlier for them in terms of trajectory. And I wouldn't have known that without asking these simple surveys. You can see like the top words were also, for the most part, pretty positive. One of the reasons that I feel good about this or that class is this data. And I think sometimes, just to reflect more broadly, that we talk about like caring about classroom community and caring about how students are doing, but we don't have any data to back this up. This isn't everything, but it's something. And the one other thing I'd add before this video ends is that sometimes the results are not great. And you got to be willing to share the not great results with students too. The worst thing in the world is to give a survey and then not share the results with students, in my opinion. And I would just caution you to be at a place where you're willing to share the results, both checking in with students individually with the optional, but especially the whole class conversations. Because if you're not, I don't think this survey is the right thing for you. Just being completely honest. Remember, I have a link below on this video, if you're seeing this on YouTube, to the full post. And as always, feel free to share this with others. The goal is, with everything with the Broken Copier, if it works for you, feel free to share it with others, and subscribe, share, and leave comments. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. And hopefully this is a helpful tool and resource for your classroom or space. Take care.